Have you ever woken up and the first thing that fills your mind is someone you can't seem to forget? That feeling when it's as if their presence lingers, even in their absence, like a shadow hanging over your thoughts. You go through your day, and no matter how hard you try to focus, they somehow weave into every moment, every song, and every silence. Have you felt this before? What if I told you that this overwhelming obsession isn't just about them? That the mind doesn't hold on to people randomly, but rather, it clings to things it believes are essential? It's as if your mind has anchored their image into your emotional system, convinced that they hold a key to something deeper you need to understand. But what if you're missing something bigger in the process? Imagine being trapped in an emotional loop, chasing something that feels so real yet is so elusive. What if the constant return of thoughts wasn't about that person at all? Instead, what if it's about an unfulfilled need inside of you, a yearning for meaning, connection, or even healing that you've projected onto them, believing they hold the answers? There's something eerily unsettling about being unable to stop thinking about someone. It's as if their presence wraps itself around your mind, like a shadow that you can't shake off. The first thought that greets you when you open your eyes is them there, nestled in the quiet of the morning. As you move through your day, somehow they linger. Every song that plays, every quiet moment, seems to echo their presence. It's as if their voice is just about to slip through the silence, waiting to be heard. The strange part is, it doesn't matter how long it's been since you last saw them, or how far away they are. It doesn't even matter how irrational it may seem to others, or even to yourself. You just can't get them out of your mind. But here's the thing that most people don't realize: when your mind is consumed by someone, it's not just about them. It's about you. The obsession, the constant loop of thoughts, is real, but there's a deeper message underneath it all. You're not broken for feeling this way. You're not weak for being overwhelmed by thoughts of someone who once touched your life and left a lasting mark. But if you don't pause, if you don't stop and listen to what your mind is trying to reveal, you might mistake this chaos for your destiny. You might confuse longing for purpose. And in doing so, you could unintentionally sabotage your own growth, all for someone who might not even realize the inner turmoil you're experiencing. Let's make one thing absolutely clear. Your thoughts are never random, especially the ones that keep repeating themselves. The mind is far more strategic than we often realize. It doesn't hold on to things without reason. Your mind holds on to what it believes is crucial for your survival. That person you can't stop thinking about, your brain has registered them as significant, so much so that it has woven their presence into your emotional operating system, almost like a program it can't shut off. Maybe they gave you something that you weren't finding anywhere else: attention, validation, connection, intensity. Or maybe they hurt you in a way that your mind just can't let go of. It fixates on that moment of impact, as though it's trying to resolve some puzzle. Whatever the case may be, your mind won't let them go until it has solved this riddle. But here's the harsh truth: that person is just a symbol. The thoughts you keep circling around them, they're not really about them at all. They're fragments of a deeper need: your need for meaning, for understanding, for closure. You've projected an idea, a phantom memory onto them, and the more you chase it, the further you drift away from what's real. The modern world tells you to follow your heart, to chase after what feels intense, what feels passionate. But what if your heart is confused? What if what you feel is just unresolved pain, disguised as romantic longing? What if the intensity you feel isn't about love at all, but about something deeper, something still waiting to heal? No one teaches you how to pause, how to examine your thoughts with discipline. No one shows you how to question the emotional stories you've created around another person. As you reflect on this, ask yourself, what is your mind really trying to tell you? Is it truly about them, or is it about something deeper that you need to confront within yourself? Let's dive further into what this means for your personal growth and how to break free from this cycle. As we explored earlier, the mind's fixation on a person isn't just about them. It's about what they represent, what they've triggered within you, something deep, something unresolved. But the truth is, when your thoughts are consumed by someone, you're not in love. You're in a cycle, a loop. The more you think about them, the more power you give to the narrative you've built around them. And that narrative, not the person, becomes your prison. So, what does it truly mean when you can't stop thinking about someone? It means something inside you has been triggered. But here's the crucial part. That part of you isn't asking to be silenced or ignored. It's asking to be understood. The task at hand isn't to chase them or to try to erase them from your mind. No, your task is to get curious, ruthlessly curious. What does this person represent to you? What did you feel with them that you haven't been able to feel on your own? And why is that feeling so rare in your life that you've attached it to just one person? If you don't explore these questions, your fixation will continue to shape your decisions and distort your sense of self-worth. You'll find yourself measuring your value based on whether they reach out, whether they look back, whether they miss you. And that's a dangerous one. Because the moment you do that, you hand over your power, you let someone else control your emotional center, you become a satellite orbiting someone else's gravity. And with every passing day, if you don't pull back, you'll find yourself drifting further and further from your own path. This isn't about blaming yourself for feeling this way. It's about awakening to a new understanding. It's about reclaiming authority over your mind and your emotions. When you can't stop thinking about someone, it's a clear sign that part of your identity has merged with theirs. And the healing process doesn't come from chasing them or running away from them. It comes from separating your story from their presence. Your life holds meaning that is not dependent on whether someone stays, notices, or returns. But if you don't build that meaning for yourself, you'll keep trying to borrow it from others. You must become the person who can carry your own weight, not because you're not allowed to feel, but because feelings without direction only create chaos. Your obsession with them isn't proof of love. No, it's a mirror. A mirror that shows you where your boundaries are thin, where your wounds are still open, and where your power has been handed over. And once you truly see that, you're given a choice. You can either keep spiraling deeper into the imagined significance of this person, or you can begin anchoring yourself in the truth. This process isn't about suppressing emotions. It's about leading them, guiding them. It's about not allowing your inner world to be dictated by the emotional residue left behind by someone who is no longer in your life, or worse, someone who never truly saw you. Your mind is precious. Your energy is sacred. If you allow your thoughts to be hijacked by someone who no longer exists in your reality, or someone who never truly understood you, then you're giving away the one thing you absolutely cannot afford to lose: your attention. Wherever your attention goes, your life follows. You are not here to be consumed by memories. You are here to build a future. But you cannot build forward if your soul is stuck in rewind. So ask yourself this. Are you ready to let go of the past and begin creating the future you deserve? The next step on this journey is about reclaiming your power. Let's dive into how to take control of your thoughts and create the life that is truly yours. As we discussed before, when we can't stop thinking about someone, it's easy to label it as love. But the real question isn't, why can't I stop thinking about them? It's what part of myself have I abandoned that they seem to fulfill? This is where the real work begins, and this is where freedom is born. When your mind is stuck in a loop around someone, it's tempting to romanticize the obsession, to believe that this emotional noise is a sign that they are the one. But here's the truth. That's rarely the full story. In most cases, what feels like uncontrollable longing is actually a signala warning light flashing in your emotional system, alerting you that there's something unresolved beneath the surface. The mind doesn't get caught in cycles around people without reason. There's always a cause, a deeper trigger. It's not random, and it's definitely not poetic. What's happening is a symptom of conflicting, internal conflict that hasn't yet been addressed, let alone resolved. We often want to believe that our emotional experiences are grounded in the present moment, that the person who occupies our thoughts must be significant because they stir something intense inside of us right now. But the truth is, they're often just the spark that ignited a fire that was already there. That obsessive pull you feel, it didn't start with them. It began long before they entered your life. Somewhere along the way, a pattern was formed. This pattern is a way of attaching, a way of interpreting emotional closeness as either salvation or danger. And when someone walks into your life and touches just the right nerve, whether they provide connection, admiration, security, or simply the feeling of being seen, your entire psyche lights up. It's as if everything within you suddenly goes on alert, either in a desperate need for validation or out of a perceived threat. The human mind is wired to detect patterns and ensure survival. When someone provides a glimpse of something you've unconsciously longed for, your mind takes a snapshot. It records the experience, assigning it high emotional value. But here's where things get tricky. If that person then pulls away, or if the situation becomes complicated, your brain doesn't just let go. Instead, it treats the situation like an unsolved problem that must be fixed. It loops the memory, replays the conversations, and floods you with a barrage of what-ifs. Not because it's being cruel, but because it believes that this unresolved emotional experience threatens your sense of order, your emotional stability. This is where so many people get lost. They think their obsession means they've found the one, that the inability to let go is evidence that the person was special beyond comprehension. But what's really happening is that their inner world is in disarray. The mind, desperate for resolution, keeps circling back to the source of the emotional disruption. The truth is, it's not love that keeps you thinking about them. It's the unresolved nature of what they awakened in you. To fixate on someone is often a way of avoiding a deeper question. What am I afraid to confront? As you reflect on this, ask yourself, what are you avoiding? What is the deeper issue that you need to address? Let's move forward and explore how to begin the journey of untangling these emotional webs and reclaiming your power. As we discussed earlier, the obsession with someone often masks deeper emotional issues that we might not be ready to face. So the real question becomes, what part of myself am I avoiding? That person might have triggered a fear of abandonment, a deep-rooted insecurity, or a sense of not being enough. Maybe they reflected back a part of you that you haven't yet accepted or embraced. Perhaps they showed you a version of yourself you've been trying to become, or reminded you of a version you've been desperately trying to escape. In any case, they became a symbol and emotional marker, and your mind, struggling to make sense of this symbol, got caught in an endless loop. The painful part of this experience is the feeling that you're being emotionally hijacked, as if you're no longer in control of your own thoughts. Your peace is disrupted, and you start to question your worth based on whether this person notices you, responds to you, or returns to you. But here's what you may not realize. The conflict is no longer about them. It's about you. It's the battle between the part of you that craves healing and the part of you that resists the discomfort required to achieve it. Fixation is not always a sign of deep emotional connection. In many cases, it's a signal that your emotional framework has been destabilized. You've been knocked off balance, and instead of returning to yourself to restore that balance, you're projecting your need for healing onto someone else. Unconsciously, you may be making them responsible for solving an emotional puzzle they never signed up for. To move forward, you must first acknowledge something crucial. Your thoughts are not inherently trustworthy. Just because someone occupies your mind doesn't mean they belong in your future. Just because you can't stop thinking about them doesn't mean they are your destiny. The mind is easily manipulated by unresolved pain, and until you address and resolve that pain, your emotional compass will keep pointing toward whoever activated it. This is why emotional discipline is so crucial. You must become the steward of your own thoughts. You need to examine them not with shame, but with honesty. What does this obsession protect me from feeling? What uncomfortable truth am I avoiding? Is it easier to fixate on them endlessly than to admit that I've lost part of myself in the process? The irony here is that the more you chase the person mentally, the further you drift from your center. You start to forget who you were before they entered your life. You lose track of your goals, your values, your clarity, all in pursuit of the illusion that if you think about them enough, you'll somehow find peace. But the truth is, peace doesn't come from obsession. Peace comes from understanding. And once you recognize that the obsession is a sign of inner conflict, not just romantic intensity, you begin to take your power back. You stop looking at the person as the solution and start seeing them for what they truly are, a messenger. They showed up not to fulfill your every need, but to awaken you to something important. This realization is where the journey truly begins. Let's explore how you can transform this awareness into action and begin reclaiming your emotional freedom. As we discussed earlier, when someone occupies your thoughts continuously, it's tempting to believe that they hold an incredibly significant place in your life. But what often goes unnoticed is that the person you can't stop thinking about is rarely the true object of your obsession. In fact, they may only be a placeholder, a symbol reflecting back to you a part of yourself that feels incomplete. Maybe, just maybe, they triggered something inside you. Maybe they served as a mirror, reflecting back parts of yourself you've been unable or unwilling to see. Perhaps they unknowingly played a role in your emotional story, but now that the role has been played, the responsibility is yours. Your healing, your growth, your clarity, they are not dependent on whether this person stays or leaves your life. They depend entirely on whether you are willing to face the part of you that became so vulnerable in the first place. So, the next time you find yourself drowning in thoughts of someone, remember this. The intensity of your thoughts is not proof of fate. It's not a sign that this person is the one you're destined to be with. Instead, it is a call your mind, calling you to examine your emotional foundations. It's not pulling you towards someone else. It's drawing you back to yourself. And the sooner you heed that call, the sooner you can reclaim your own strength and power. When someone takes up so much space in your mind, it's easy to believe they must be incredibly important to your life story. But what you may not realize is that more often than not, they are simply a symbol representing something deeper within you. You've projected something you're missing internally onto them, a need, a longing, something that feels absent from your own life. They become the representation of that need. And the deeper that need runs, the more powerful your thoughts about them become. You see, people don't fixate on others without cause. The human mind doesn't waste energy on something that doesn't hold emotional value. If someone keeps returning to your thoughts, it's because at some level your psyche has attached significance to them. But here's the key. It's rarely about who they truly are. It's about what they represent to you. You're not obsessed with them. You're obsessed with the version of yourself you imagine when you're with them, or the emotional state you believe they can unlock within you. Maybe they made you feel seen in a way that was rare for you, so unfamiliar that your entire emotional system latched onto it. Maybe they made you feel desired, a feeling that scratched the surface of an old wound, the kind of wound that told you deep down that you weren't enough. This is the danger of emotional projection. When you haven't developed certain qualities within yourself, like self-worth, confidence, security, or acceptance, you begin to look for someone else to carry those qualities for you. You unconsciously assign them the job of being your source of validation, comfort, or meaning. And the more deeply you believe that they are the key to unlocking those feelings, the more your mind will fight to keep them in your awareness, circling around them until you resolve the emotional conflict within yourself. So, how can you begin to break free from this cycle? The first step is recognizing that the source of your emotional turmoil isn't the other personas, your own internal landscape that needs healing. Let's dive into the next step of how you can regain control of your emotional world and shift your focus back to yourself. As we've discussed, the obsession isn't truly about the person. It's about what your psyche believes they are holding for you. It's why you can become fixated on someone you barely know, someone who treated you poorly, or someone who was only in your life for a brief moment. While your conscious mind may be confused by the intensity of your thoughts, Your subconscious mind is crystal clear. This person symbolizes something that feels essential to your emotional survival. And until you reclaim that power, until you address and accept the parts of yourself that are missing, they will continue to haunt your inner world. There's a clear distinction between love and projection. Love sees clearly. Love accepts the other person as they are without illusion. But projection, that's built on fantasy. It fills in the blanks with all the unmet needs you've been carrying, elevating the person not for who they truly are, but for what they represent. They become more than just a human being. They become an icon of possibility, a symbol of something you're desperately seeking. But here's the truth. When you assign someone else the role of fulfilling something you haven't yet given yourself, you set the stage for dependency, disappointment, and emotional chaos. Think about it. Why do we obsess over people who don't reciprocate? Why do we hold on to someone who walked away, someone who sent mixed signals, or someone who gave us attention only to withdraw it later? The answer is simple. Inconsistency activates scarcity, and when something becomes scarce, we assign it more value. You start to believe that this person holds something rare, something you can't easily find elsewhere, but the reality is the rarity isn't in the person themselves. The rarity is in the emotional experience you attach to them. That's what you're truly chasing. That's what you're really after. The person is simply the carrier of that experience. But here's the truth that sets you free. You can create that experience yourself. You have the power to cultivate the same emotional state that you've been convinced they are responsible for giving you. You don't need to chase someone to feel whole. What you truly need is to reconnect with the parts of yourself that you've neglected. When you do that, the obsession dissolves, not because the person changes, but because the power you projected onto them returns to where it always belonged, with you. This doesn't mean you won't still feel the pull. It doesn't mean you won't have moments where your mind drifts back to them. But when you see the projection for what it is, you stop being ruled by it. You stop letting your thoughts be hijacked by the fantasy. And in that awareness, you begin to heal. The way out of this cycle isn't through more contact with the person, more conversations, or more closure. The way out is through self-affirmation. You must become the source of what you were trying to get from them. If they made you feel important, then you must start treating your life as though it matters. If they made you feel beautiful, you must start seeing yourself with the same kindness and admiration. This journey of self-empowerment is where true healing begins. So, how do you begin? Let's explore the steps you can take to reclaim your inner strength and stop allowing your emotional state to be dictated by someone else. As we've explored, taking back your emotional power means reconnecting with the parts of yourself that you've neglected. If someone made you feel wanted, you must now start wanting your own growth, your own truth, and your own presence. It's time to stop depending on someone else to fill those emotional gaps. This process, though, is not easy. It demands brutal honesty. It requires you to face the parts of yourself that have been hungry for far too long, parts that have been seeking validation, love, and acceptance from outside sources. And it insists that you stop looking outward for rescue because no one can save you from your own emotional projections. Only you can. The reward for this inner work? Freedom. Real freedom. When you stop projecting your emotional needs onto others, you become whole again. From this place of wholeness, you will begin to attract differently. You'll love differently. You'll think differently. No longer will you be magnetized by people who reflect your wounds and insecurities. Instead, you'll find yourself drawn to those who mirror your strength, your clarity, and your integrity. And that shifts everything. Your relationships, your sense of self, and your future, all of it transforms. So, the next time someone occupies your mind constantly, ask yourself this: what do they represent to me? What am I hoping they'll fulfill that I haven't yet claimed for myself? And how can I start giving myself that gift today? Not tomorrow, not when they text, not if they come back, but now. Because until you do, you'll continue to confuse projection with connection and fantasy with fate. You deserve better than that. You deserve truth, You deserve presence. And above all, you deserve the peace that comes when you finally take back your power. The person you can't stop thinking about isn't just occupying your mind, they're influencing your very identity. Thought after thought, day after day, they become more than just a memory or a fleeting presence. They start shaping your choices, your emotions, and even your sense of self-worth. This is where the damage begins, quietly and subtly. When someone takes up so much of your mental space, you begin to adapt your inner world to accommodate them. Often, you don't even realize you're doing it. You might find yourself checking your phone constantly, not because you expect something logical, but because a part of you has become emotionally dependent on their response. You start altering your behavior, your goals, your energy just to stay connected, even if only in your imagination, to someone who might not even be actively involved in your life anymore. This isn't love. It's the slow surrendering of your sense of self to a narrative that no longer serves you. One of the greatest dangers of persistent fixation is the slow erosion of your personal agency. When someone dominates your thoughts, they begin to define your emotional state. You become reactive rather than intentional. If they are warm, you feel high. If they are distant, you plummet. Your peace, your confidence, and even your sense of purpose start to hinge on their proximity, their attention. And that is when you lose yourself. So, how can you break free from this emotional dependency? How can you start regaining control over your thoughts and actions? Let's explore the next steps in reclaiming your power and beginning the journey back to your true self. As we've seen before, emotional fixation doesn't happen all at once. It builds gradually through thousands of tiny decisions, decisions where you choose someone else over your own center, over your own clarity, over your own healing. The most insidious part of this dynamic is that it often disguises itself as hope. You convince yourself that the reason you can't stop thinking about them is because something profound is at play. You tell yourself that this obsession is proof of a rare connection, destiny, or a love story that isn't finished yet. But that hope, it becomes a trap. You start living in a future that doesn't exist. You imagine conversations that have never taken place, reunions that are nowhere near your reality, apologies that may never come. You stay stuck, not because you're incapable of moving on, but because you become addicted to the version of reality where they eventually validate the depth of your feelings. This version plays like a movie in your mind. It gives you emotional highs, but it robs you of the present moment. It steals the time and energy you could be investing in yourself, in your growth, in something real and tangible. The reality you need to understand is this: the more you think about someone who isn't actively part of your life, the more power you give them over your current reality. They don't have to say a word, and yet they're controlling your emotional climate. They don't need to be physically present, yet they dictate the pace of your healing. That, my friend, is not connection. That's emotional captivity, and the only person who can unlock that prison is you. Now, this isn't a call to become numb. It isn't about suppressing your feelings or pretending that what you're going through doesn't matter. What it is, however, is a challenge to reorient your focus. When you catch yourself thinking about them for the 100th time in a day, ask yourself, what am I actually feeling right now? Am I feeling lonely, insecure, disappointed? Am I trying to escape something in my current life by diving into the fantasy of what could have been? Behind the obsession, there's usually a pain you haven't yet faced, a fear of being alone, a belief that you're not enough on your own, or a wound that tells you that being chosen is the only thing that gives you value. That's where the real work begins, and that's exactly what those recurring thoughts are trying to cover up. There's a deeper layer to this, one that most people don't want to talk about: identity loss. When you wrap your self-worth around another person, your identity becomes entangled with theirs. You become a version of yourself that only exists in relation to them. Without them, you feel aimless. You forget what it feels like to be whole, independent, and grounded. But the loss of self is not always loud and dramatic. Sometimes it comes in the form of quiet compromises. You stop doing things you used to love. You lose enthusiasm for your own plans and passions. You begin defining success or happiness in terms of whether they return, whether they notice you, whether they validate your existence. This emotional surrender is where the real work starts. So, how can you begin to reclaim your sense of self and break free from the emotional chains you've allowed to bind you? Let's dive into how you can rediscover your personal power and take the first steps toward healing. As we've seen, when your life becomes consumed by someone else's presence, whether real or imagined, it starts to feel like you're waiting for something that may never come. Your life begins to feel less like a journey and more like a waiting room, where everything pauses until they approve, until they return, until they validate your existence. But reclaiming your identity means stepping out of that waiting room and remembering who you were before they ever entered the picture. It means going deeper than just reclaiming what you lost. It's about building a version of yourself that isn't shaped by their presence or absence. Restoring yourself in this way requires real courage. It means letting go of the illusion that they complete you. It means facing the terrifying thought that you can be whole without them, that your life doesn't begin when they come back, but when you return to yourself. This is where the real work starts, and it takes discipline, emotional discipline. It's the ability to sit with the discomfort of not escaping into the fantasy of what could be, and the willingness to choose yourself again and again, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. Because the truth is, you don't miss them as much as you miss who you were when you felt close to them. You don't crave their presence as much as you crave the emotional safety or excitement they once triggered within you. But here's the good news. Those feelings, they can be rebuilt from within. Not overnight, but with deliberate, honest work. You rebuild them by choosing habits that serve your growth, through conversations that help you see clearly, and through actions that reinforce your worth regardless of who is or isn't by your side. The mind is powerful, and if left unchecked, it will drag you back into old patterns that feel familiar but are ultimately destructive. That's why you need to interrupt the cycle not by force, but by redirection. Every time your thoughts pull you into a fantasy about them, redirect that energy toward a real goal. Build something. Create something. Learn something. Heal something. Obsession thrives on idle energy, but progress kills it. Growth is the antidote to fixation. So, the next time someone is taking up all the space in your head and they're not making any effort to be in your life, ask yourself, why are you allowing them to live there? What part of your identity has been handed over to a memory? And then begin the work of calling it back, piece by piece, day by day. Not for revenge, not to prove anything to anyone, but because your life deserves your full presence. Your story cannot unfold if your attention is stuck in someone else's chapter. When you can't stop thinking about someone, it's not just emotional tethering. You're energetically drained. These obsessive thoughts aren't harmless daydreams. They're consuming your focus, your productivity, and your capacity for peace. Every moment spent looping around what could have been, what should have been, or what might still be is a moment stolen from the present. This kind of mental occupation becomes a form of self-abandonment. While your attention is trapped in someone else's orbit, your own life quietly begins to fall apart at the edges. So, how do you break free from this emotional cycle and restore your peace? Let's explore the steps you can take to recenter your energy and start reclaiming your life, piece by piece. As we've seen, when you allow someone to occupy so much mental space, your own life begins to suffer. Your goals lose clarity, your discipline fades, and you stop showing up fully for yourself. Emotionally, you've outsourced your power to someone else. There is a cost to fixation, and that cost is your potential. People rarely recognize just how much they're sacrificing by staying mentally loyal to someone who is no longer actively contributing to their life. It might feel like you're just holding space for them, as though you're waiting with dignity, as if your persistence is noble, but in reality, you're delaying your own evolution. You're postponing your next chapter out of fear, fantasy, or false hope. You're clinging to the image of what that person represents to you, whether it's closure, comfort, redemption, or love. But by doing so, you're neglecting the very life you have the power to build. When your mind becomes obsessed, your imagination begins to work against you. It creates illusions, editing your memories to highlight the good and blur out the bad. It crafts scenarios where everything works out, where they realize your worth, where they finally become who you needed them to be. This imagined version of them becomes more intoxicating than the reality ever was. And suddenly, you're no longer living in your own life, you're living in a dream. You replay old conversations in your mind, dissecting every word, rehearsing future interactions, all while the real world waits for you to come back to it. But the world doesn't stop just because your mind is stuck. Time moves forward, opportunities pass, and relationships with others begin to suffer because your emotional bandwidth is spent on someone who isn't even present. You may appear functional to the outside world, but internally you're distracted, disconnected, and depleted. The longer this cycle goes on, the harder it becomes to remember who you were before the obsession began. Your sense of self starts to erode not through a single dramatic collapse, but through a slow, daily leak of energy and intention. To break free from this mental prison, you must first confront the truth. This person no longer belongs in the center of your thoughts. Not because they were insignificant or the connection didn't matter, but because the cost of their presence in your mind has become too high. You owe yourself more than a life spent fantasizing about someone who is not showing up for you. You owe yourself reality, truth, and movement. Reclaiming your energy isn't about pretending they never mattered. It's about refusing to let your life continue revolving around their absence. It's about waking up to the fact that your thoughts are a valuable resource, and you've been investing them in someone who isn't giving you any return. If you spent your money the way you've been spending your thoughts, would you feel like you're making wise investments? Now that you recognize the cost of emotional fixation, let's explore how you can start reclaiming your energy, your thoughts, and ultimately, your life. The journey of returning to yourself starts with small steps, and I'm here to guide you through it. Let's take that first step together. As we've seen, emotional energy is just as valuable as financial energy. Yet, while we would never let ourselves go bankrupt financially by investing in something that's unavailable, inconsistent, or indifferent, we often allow ourselves to be emotionally bankrupt. We think it's devotion, but in reality, there's nothing romantic about sacrificing your peace for the sake of someone else's potential. There's nothing noble about anchoring your emotions to someone who has already let go. True strength doesn't lie in holding on. It lies in letting go with purpose. It's in choosing to redirect your energy even when it hurts. And especially when it hurts, because that's when the shift happens. That's when healing begins. Not when they come back, not when they explain themselves, but when you decide that your life is far too valuable to be lived half present and half dreaming of something that isn't real. The greatest transformation starts with a single, brutal question. How much of myself have I lost trying to keep this person alive in my mind? Am I willing to start retrieving what I've given away? It begins with noticing where your energy leaks every time you check their social media, every time you reread old messages, every time you imagine a different ending, every time you're leaking energy. It feels small in the moment, but those moments add up. They become hours, days, weeks, and before you know it, you've invested months of your emotional life into a version of a relationship that only exists in your head. Recovery means closing those leaks. It means reclaiming your mornings, your attention, your passions. It means putting your phone down when the urge to check on them arises and choosing instead to invest in your future. It means building routines that anchor you to the present. It means remembering that your energy is sacred and should be spent on people and purposes that give life back to you. Eventually, the thoughts will quiet down, but not because time heals. Time only heals if it's used well. Obsession dies not through waiting, but through action, through conscious, repeated decisions to place your energy where it can grow. In your work, your friendships, your health, your craft into you. This is your life right now. Not the one you had with them, not the one you're hoping to have in some distant future. This one today, with all its mess and potential. And you have a choice. Stay lost in the loop of thoughts or step out and reclaim the energy you've forgotten is yours. You are not just the person who got hurt, who was left, or who was overlooked. You are also the person who survived. The one who can rebuild, the one who can redirect, the one who can finally fully come home to themselves. Now that you understand the power of reclaiming your energy, let's explore how to cultivate the habits and mindset that will support this transformation and how you can start living fully in the present moment, ready to build the future you deserve. If you've made it this far, you've taken a big step on the journey to healing and rediscovery of yourself. As we've seen, this process isn't easy, but it is worth it. Remember, you are not the negative thoughts or feelings you're facing. You are someone with the power to make a change, to rebuild your life, and to find the peace you truly deserve. So, if you feel stuck, don't worry. We'll overcome these challenges together, one step at a time. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss the upcoming videos, where I'll share more strategies, techniques, and advice to help you live a full, strong, and fulfilling life. You deserve a life that you have full control over, and that journey starts today. Keep watching, because your journey of self-discovery and renewal is just beginning.